Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Mr. Hingham?
Here.
Mr. McCann?
Here.
Mr. Richardson?
Here.
Ms. Stout? Here. Mrs. Westfall?
Here.
All 7 members of City Council are present, therefore a quorum does exist. We welcome you to our City Council meeting and ask you to join us in our Pledge of Allegiance, this meeting led by Mr. McCann.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions to the agenda, I do have 2 additions I'd like to make. As number 11, I would like to give you a sister city update of the summer meeting held yesterday in Port Huron, Ohio, or Michigan. And as agenda item 12, I would like just to update you on a telephone call I had from a representative of Sheets concerning their proposal on Monroe Street. Mr. Fry.
Mr. Mayor, the legislation that was asked to be put forward, do you want to add that to the agenda now, or would you like to wait until after I give the report for the public hearing?
I don't think it should be added right now. I think you need to have your report and counts, then ask the question, would you like to consider the legislation tonight? Just because you put it on the agenda doesn't mean you have to take action on it.
Correct.
So I've got it penciled in here. When we get there, we'll do it.
That's fine, super,
I think it should be on the table, but it's,
great. Nothing else for me then, Mr. Mayor.
all right. Members of council, anything? Seeing none, Mr. Sanford,
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Chief Miller,
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer,
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Shaw.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome, Mr. Shaw, in your new role as our Safety and Service Director. And Ms. Briney.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and our agenda is set for this evening. Agenda item 4 is approval of our meeting minutes from our last meeting on May 20th. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move approval of the meeting minutes from the council meeting of May 20th, 2024 as submitted. Second.
Moved and seconded for approval of those meeting minutes as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved. Now we are to agenda item 5, a report of the public hearing held this evening. Council could take no action during a public hearing. Now is the time for city council to discuss.
Brian, before you give your report.
Sure.
Could we distribute that legislation? I want to see this legislation. I need a few
We'll pass
minutes
it around.
to look at it.
I think we need a motion for Mr. McCann to push back from the table.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Recognize Mr. McCann's conflict of interest and to leave the table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and let the clerk show that Mr. McCann is no longer at the council table to vote or comment. All right, report of the public hearing. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Had a public hearing started at 7:15. All members of council in attendance, but Mr. McCann is not in the audience as he's pushed back from the table and recuses himself from this particular item. Members of the administration, Mayor, Ms. Briney, Mr. Shaw, Chief Miller, Mr. Sanford, Mr. Silvernail, and Ms. Bigelow as clerk of council. People from the public, as well as Nick Myers, who's the head pro at Highland Meadows. Mr. Myers spoke briefly about the possibility of adding the 30-foot extension. All members to the existing maintenance facility to store various vehicles, including golf carts, and a number of members of the community backing up to it on Oak Hill Drive spoke in opposition to that or concern about the lack of screening and the fencing that was at the club. So after consideration, there were a number of questions from members of council. They were the only members to the public that were mailed the notices that showed up and voiced their concerns. there was some conversation back and forth between Mr. Myers and those individuals, those homeowners, and with that, I would entertain a motion to add ordinance number 79, 2024 to the agenda.
Be agenda item 5B.
So I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor, to add agenda item 5B to the agenda for ordinance number 79, 2024 as consideration.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to add ordinance 79, 2024 to the agenda for consideration. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The ordinance is on the table.
Leslie, when did we adopt this special use initially? Do you know?
Oh, Joe, do you remember? I don't, it's been a while. I can get that for you, but I don't remember offhand when the initial special use was granted.
What I'm curious about is what the special use says about storage buildings. We
Yeah.
don't know.
The special use included this storage building on the site plan, which is why when they were coming to amend it, we had them to add the addition, that's why we had them go through this process.
Special use previously approved. Reflected this storage building.
Yes.
Did it reflect any, did it require any screening at that time?
I don't believe so, but I can't, I don't believe it did.
We asked the Highland Pro, how long has that initial building been there?
Since the tournament, they put it in back, it's probably 20 plus years ago. When they moved to Highland, they use a lot of it for their storage for the LPGA.
All right, thank you,
So sometime in the 80s, 90s.
thank you. That gives you a reference, Mr. Hanem.
We did look at it when this plan was submitted to see if they would need to go through the special use permit process to amend it because of the addition.
Okay. Did the special use permit include the fence that we're talking about, that we're
I don't
here?
believe it does. It's
So
temporary.
it's just the building, and so the only issue before us is the expansion of the building, that 30-foot stretch of building. I hate to admit this, but I assume golf courses are a special use, right? Is that why we have a special use permit?
Yes. So
It's
over
more
the
than
years,
one building on the
yeah.
property.
So if you remember, Doug, a few years ago, the expansion to the, was it the pool or those renovations?
Yeah.
That came back to council.
I remember that.
Yeah, every time we do an addition or renovations, they come back.
From the chair, it seems like council has to make a decision. Do you want to introduce and vote on this tonight, or do you want to refer it back to the administration to wait for Highland Meadows' proposal on how to screen it and consider it in 2 weeks?
I don't know if knowing what the exact thing is impacts what the decision would be today.
You
As
can,
long as if there's some sort of, we
you
can
can
approve
put
it
a
later.
stipulation on the passage of it that requires them to submit or to properly screen it, which we would, the city administration would review, just to make sure that it has a chance of doing what we're saying.
Okay. And Doug, I mean, you're much more familiar with the zoning code than I am as chair of that committee. It tends to be standard practice when there's residential property up against a commercial property, that there's some sort of screening that would be applied to things like parking lots and other does that seem?
Well, there are two alternatives, and I need Mr. Shaw to help me, but if it's, the parking lot comes right up to the property line, yes, they have to put up screening, but if it's 20 feet or 30 feet away, that screening requirement goes away. Usually the concern about a parking lot is headlights shining into people's houses. That's what the issue is. This is a long way away. And again, I don't think that provision applies. They're asking for a visual screen, and that's not an unusual thing to ask for. This is just as long of a distance as I ever recall having it requested for.
Yeah, and
I'm
Lindsay,
looking at the
that's
aerial
exact,
here.
I mean, the mayor's answered your question exactly as I would, which is 100 yards is not an area that we would normally be focused on screening, particularly when there's already, I mean, what's between the houses and this building, which is a lot of golf course and a lot of other greenery, and we're talking about a 30-foot building extension.
A representative of Highland Meadows has indicated they will work on screening this to make it less objectionable to the neighbors.
Well, and in all fairness, he hasn't talked to his greenskeeper either. And I wonder how practical that is. But, I mean, he is the applicant. And I can't find golf courses. It's a country club, is that why? Semi-private golf courses?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I did not anticipate any opposition to this, honestly.
This is the first the administration has heard of it, yes.
In normal course, I would really want to look at the original special use that was granted and make sure that I suspect the ordinance that we have is consistent with the existing special use. And yet that would be your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm just one member of council. I'm comfortable moving forward with this and allowing Highland Meadows to do what they think they can and that they're comfortable with. I don't feel a need to mandate that to Highland Meadows to address this expansion of this building. I mean, I'm looking at the pictures that we have and assuming that they do this consistent with this, okay? This is not a significant visual impact for anybody, expansion of this building. I understand the concerns about other things going on there. But it is a golf course, and they have to store carts, and they have to cut and mow grass, and it seems consistent with that to me.
So I would like to see a stipulation added to the ordinance. I understand Mr. Hanum's perspective, but I don't think screening would be too much to ask for neighbors. So if there, I don't know that we need to approve any landscaping that is decided on, but I would like to see a stipulation added to the existing proposed ordinance.
Leslie, just to clarify, he needs 5 votes to get that right.
Correct.
It's changing the
Yes.
plan commission's
Yes.
recommendation.
Right.
So you need a supermajority.
Well, I would not vote for that, just so you all know. So you need to be otherwise unanimous.
Is your concern setting a precedent?
I'm, I'm sorry?
Is your concern setting a bad precedent?
Yes.
My concern,
And I'm also concerned about what I view as an unreasonable imposition of a requirement on a subjective objection of a neighbor on their neighbor's use of the property. I think this use is entirely appropriate. Highland Meadows is also a very valuable member of our community, and I think the expansion of this building, I feel kind of like I did when we talked about the water tower that's out at Centennial, okay? A lot of complaining in advance that I haven't heard a word about since we built it. I don't think this 30-foot expansion is gonna have a serious adverse impact on the aesthetic view of the golf course from these houses.
Mr. Hayden, what I've heard mostly this evening has not been about the 30-foot building expansion. It's been about the loss
Black
of trees, a poor relationship between the club and these neighbors, a tree that was gonna fall down on a neighbor's fence, and a black fence. I mean, the building, which is what this is about, has not really been the issue. It's the relationship and the lack of consideration.
I agree. I think they're two separate issues. I'm comfortable passing the ordinance as written. So I would like to move forward.
Let's have the law director clarify, if we have an emotion to modify it and it doesn't pass, is it approved without council's approval, or does it have to vote again
No, we would have to vote on the.
without the stipulation?
Correct.
Okay.
And we need 4 votes.
4 votes for the original,
To
5
endorse
votes
the
as
plan
a,
commission
yes, yes,
recommendation.
yes.
All right, I think, oh, did you?
You know, I'm comfortable moving forward with it, and I do think we've still have had that conversation that Highland is going to see what they can do to mitigate this, but I'm comfortable with it not coming back to council.
So moving ahead without the, I think, listening to Doug's reasons, I would be comfortable without a required stipulation. It's tough, because I'm looking at the aerial and to see the Northview football field just over there and how it would fit in this space, and with 30 feet out of that is just such a small piece of something that's already existing. So I think I'm gonna go with I'm convinced by the chair's thought process on this.
It seems to me, I've been quiet here, which is rare for me, as you all know. It seems to me that while there's apparently some challenges between the neighbors and the golf course management, that a verbal representation by the head pro, who was the applicant, I don't know that I necessarily need a stipulation. I can take that in good faith for what it is, that they'll do what they reasonably can to mitigate it.
Mr. Fry, in respect to your comments, I guess what is the harm in, I agree with you, a verbal commitment is good enough, but what is the harm in putting that in writing?
I think my thought process in regards to that is it sets a precedent that we are going to, and I think Mr. Hannon said it better than I'll say it, but that we're gonna have to deal with in the future, the ripple effect of that particular thing, modifying something that's passed through the planning process without the screening being required. And that's what concerns me about it. I think the club's gonna put screening in either way, but I'm prepared to move forward.
Okay, I think Mr. Hayden, we're ready for you to introduce the legislation as is.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move adoption of ordinance number 79-2024. I will read by title only. Granting a special use permit to allow the expansion of an existing storage building located at 7455 Erie Street, Sylvania, Ohio, on the application of Nick Myers on behalf of Highland Meadows Golf Club on the recommendation of the Municipal Planning Commission, and I move adoption of ordinance number 79-2024 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 79, 2024 as an emergency measure. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Hanson?
No.
Mr. Hanem?
Yes.
Mr. McCann?
No,
Is pushed back from the table. Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Ms. Stout?
Yes.
Mrs. Westfall?
Yes.
The vote is 5-1. That is sufficient votes to pass as an emergency measure. So ordinance number 79, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. All right, thank you for coming. Let the record show that Mr. McCann has rejoined us at the council table. We are now up to agenda item 6. This has to do with a water line and resurfacing project on Silvertown Drive, hiring an engineering and surveying firm to do that work for us. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. This is our engineering contract for work on Silvertown Drive. About a year ago, this roadway was supposed to be included in just a resurfacing only project. We have Bentbrook, Lindhaven, and Burgess that are actually started work today to be resurfaced. Silvertown was actually pulled from that project after further consideration and review of the water line. We've had multiple breaks on it since it's been installed since 1965. It is up for replacement. So we regrouped on that, and now we're ready to move forward with engineering, not only of the resurfacing project, but to replace the water main itself. So we did a letter of interest solicitation. We had 4 engineering consultants submit. We scored and ranked the proposals, and Fishbeck is the most highly qualified firm that we scored and ranked. As a result, we would recommend we move forward with their proposal in the amount of $64,500.
I noted in your letter, Mr. Shaw, that this is taking and replacing a cast iron water line with a ductile iron line. Is the expected useful life longer?
Our specs allow us actually to use 2 types of materials now.
Plastic pipe now.
You can use plastic pipe and or ductile, whichever is cheaper.
I'm going to take an aside on this. The President of Council just inquired. Tell us about the water line break in front of City Hall. We discussed it at staff, but the rest of City Council has not heard that was a new water line. Probably a manufacturing mistake. But
That's what we're trying to figure out. It certainly doesn't look like it was a contractor issue initially from where the break was in it. Those sections of pipe for plastic go about 20 feet in length, and they're bell and spigot, so it's bigger on one end and narrower on the other, and it just kind of sleeves over and they gasket together. It was broken on the very bottom closest to the bell, and it was about 6 foot long at the time that it let go. The pipe was all still intact, it was just cracked. That line's been in service for 6 months, 7 months, going on almost 8 months. So whatever defect was in there had to have been very minute and pretty small and worked its way through. So we took a lot of photos of it. We've turned it over to the contractor. It's going to be up to him to decide with his pipe supplier what actions he wants to take from it. But, long story short, all the costs that we had in replacing it and our man hours and powers to clean the road before the parade, those are all going to be recovered with the project. So,
all right, thank you for that
Yep.
update on that. Now let's get back to Silvertown. And the proposal in front of us is to hire Fishbeck in $64,500 for the design. Construction will be 2025.
that's the goal, correct?
Okay. Questions from members of council? Hearing none. Mr. McCann, you have proposed ordinance 77.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce by title only ordinance number 77-2024, accepting the proposal of Fishbeck to provide professional engineering and surveying services for the Silvertown Drive water line improvements and resurfacing project. Appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $64,500. I move for passage of ordinance number 77-2024 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance number 77, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 77, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Moving to agenda item 7, we have proposed ordinance 78, 2024. This is to make a change to the salary of the clerk of courts. Ms. Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Schroyer and I will probably do this one together if you have any specific questions. This is actually a reduction in the clerk of court salary from $71,720 to $60,000. And I believe the reason for that is that it is a new person with less years of experience, so they've made the salary commensurate with who was filling the role. The original clerk of courts, I believe, retired.
You're taking some of the managerial requirements from the job away, so they thought it was better to lower the pay. It is a different person. The person that was in the position is going to a different position in the court. And this is a person that's already in the court, whereas already an employee in the court, they're being promoted to the court clerk position.
There is
With
not
less
a,
managerial experience.
and there's not a companion issue that's gonna come to us to raise the salary wherever these responsibilities are going to.
There's been no indications to us about that.
All right.
And this came from the courts?
Yes, the judge and the magistrate requested this.
Just for council's knowledge, there may be another issue coming in the future, or at least that Mr. Schroyer needs to cope with, which is the cost of security at the court. Because of the age of the current people providing that security, they're having trouble necessarily finding somebody to do it at that same cost. That's a separate issue. It's not on the table tonight. Questions? Further questions? Hearing none, we have ordinance 78, 2024. Mrs. Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 78, 2024, revising the administrative, departmental, and divisional organization of the city and the codified ordinances thereof by amending Sylvania Codified Ordinance Section 139.03, D3, definition and adoption of the compensation plan to adjust the clerk of court salary from $71,720 annually to $60,000 annually. I move passage of ordinance number 78, 2024 as an emergency measure.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 78, 2024 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 78, 2024 is enacted as an emergency measure. Agenda item 8. We have a vehicle that is recommended by Mr. Shaw to place on Gov Deals. Mr. Shaw, describe the vehicle to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is our 2007 street sweeper. We have two in our fleet. This one has done more than its duty, and we had one in the budget for this year to purchase a new one anyway, so we are ready to dispose of the 2007 sweeper. It's done a very good job for us.
We have the new sweeper?
No, not yet. We have one that is multi-purpose, that does sumping and street sweeping. So I don't think we've taken delivery of it just yet, but we're okay with just the one that we've got.
There are no further questions. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Shaw's recommendation to place the 2007 Schwarz sweeper that is discussed in his memo dated the 3rd of June 2024 is obsolete, and to put it on Gov Deals for bidding.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize the existing street sweeper to be placed on Gov Deals. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 9 is committee reports. Any committee reports being made at this time? For agenda item 10, committee referrals. Hearing none, we're to added agenda item 11, a sister city update. I just wanted to give city council an update on our sister city relationship, which seems to be growing in strength post-COVID now. I, along with probably 8 members of the Sylvania City Sister City Commission, traveled north to Port Huron to meet with an equal number, or perhaps a few more, coming from Woodstock, including the mayor of Woodstock attended as well. We met for about 2 hours in a restaurant adjacent to the Blue Water Bridge up there. It was quite a spot to sit and watch the freighters go by. And it was a very positive meeting. Different activities were discussed, including the ones that we all know are coming, which will be our invitation to them to participate in our fall festival, and their invitation to us to go to their Santa Claus parade. But other activities were discussed as well. Art Exchange was a success last fall, and we're working on a music exchange to take place later this year, that the Sisters of St. Francis are participating in that as well, as they did on the Art Exchange. Other Rotary Club and other sorts of exchanges were discussed as well, and I was pleased with the returning to some strength of our relationship, because we were totally out of touch for 12 to 18 months. We weren't allowed to cross the border and talk to them. Well, they drove and crossed the border. Their travel time was about 1 hour and 35 minutes. Ours was about 1 hour and 50 minutes. And I was pleased by the attendance and the agenda. We also, Sister City Commission will be meeting on Thursday. I don't know if you all got the agenda for that or not. You're welcome to attend. I believe it's at the Senior Center. Senior Center at 4 o'clock. It will include an election of new officers, and David Walker, who you may know as a longtime community-minded person, has agreed to be the new chair, and he attended the meeting as well. So, no action required, just an update, positive update. Agenda item 12. I wanted to make you aware of a phone call I received today from a legal representative of Sheetz. It's a person that we all know, Jerry Parker, and he was very soft in his approach. He was not pressuring in any way, but he said that his client asked him to contact me and determine the mayor's position and city council's position about the approval of their proposed site plan. As you know, that's been delayed because of our safety department's concerns about the left turn out of the proposed Sheetz onto Monroe Street. And I confirmed that with him. I said that that's coming out of the administration, so I understand that, and I agree with that. But he wanted me to mention this to you because he says, well, if they can't get that left turn, they don't intend to build on that site. And if they can't build on that site, who can? And I said, well, first off, we were hoping that you would find a path to get down to the traffic light to make your left turns out of that. Chief Miller has expressed to me and staff that because of the congestion on Monroe Street, and Mr. Shaw has also been a part of these discussions, that left turns will be difficult. And they have promoted their business to us as having a lot of traffic volume. And this is a case where you wait 30 seconds or so, and Chief, correct me, or Joe, somebody's gonna get impatient, they're gonna nose out, they're not gonna find an opening, and they're gonna possibly create accidents. And that's what we're concerned about, especially when there's a traffic light so nearby. So I gave him that path.
Where's the roundabout? I mean, don't we have kind of,
This whole thing is moving farther to the northwest. That traffic light where it is right now next to Burger King will not be there.
right,
It does go farther to the northwest, and I know that Mr. Shaw has been asking them to work with the engineer and the expected traffic at that new roundabout. It is farther away, no doubt about it.
I just happen to have this map.
Right now, the traffic backs up past this site to the traffic light, and it is a hazardous situation. But when he asked, well, if they can't build there, who could? And I said, well, somebody that's gonna get the traffic light, or somebody else that isn't telling us how much traffic they're gonna generate. That's how you look at the traffic studies. It could be a bank, it could be a commercial development, it could be a restaurant. In a different economic time, it could be an office building, as it has been in the past. But we are looking for them to help solve the problem, but I wanted to make sure you understood, and he wants to make sure that's where we're at, because his comment was that Sheets probably will withdraw from the site and withdraw from the city, or at least from that site in the city. I don't need comments from you unless you'd like to make them, or you can you can tell me your comments, you can talk to Mr. Parker directly. This was not an attorney kind of conversation, and it was not adversarial in any way.
Here, I'm looking at this site map that they have. Is this the way it's going to be or the way that it is?
I believe we have a site plan that shows a right in, I can't see what you've got here. Yeah, that's a new one. I can see the gas pumps on it.
Yeah, but is the site map on this the current or what it will be?
The planning commission and the service department have been waiting for them to submit a new plan. They have not done so. It's been delayed now for 2 months in front of the plan commission.
The little site map on the right side there,
That's the existing
that's what I
intersections
thought.
up, yeah.
That's not really relevant.
Well, if you go to the middle of that triangle, that's where it's gonna be. There's gonna be one, and it's not a traffic circle. It's a traffic light
It is a light.
intersection.
Okay,
It's not a traffic circle.
okay.
So it's, I don't know, Joe, maybe 100 feet farther to the northwest, I don't know. Maybe a little more, but it's, that's not that many car lengths. We hope that it will help the congestion. But I don't know whether, I don't want to put the chief or Mr. Shaw on the hot seat here. That's what I have heard, listening to their recommendations. We have given Sheets a way to work on it, to have a right turnout only or connect to the traffic light. And they have not been able to do so or unwilling to do so.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. McCann?
just a question, maybe clarification on the record. There was a traffic study done regarding this?
They did, excuse me, they did their own traffic study. They're required to based on peak generation of traffic. So they did their own study and they used like the existing corridor to base that off of. And we recommended, since the corridor is gonna undergo significant changes, especially in terms of cycle length on the signals, you should really be basing your stuff on the new stuff. And that's what they're in the process of doing now.
And I would still wait for that, but my impression from your attorney, Mr. Parker, is that, no, they're not doing that. That was the message I thought I heard. But again, it was not an aggressive or adversarial message. He was just looking for clarity at the request of his client. Planning Commission meets next week. If we don't have anything new, they have to either request an extension or the Plan Commission will have to act on it. I don't need any input from you, but if you have some, give it to me individually or call Mr. Parker directly. Any questions for me? That's the latest. Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. We do have an information item in here about the Sylvania River Trail murals. The short wall of these murals is gonna be done at this time. Due to construction, this is where we go underneath US 23. But the other one's gonna get moved, so no sense doing that right now. Okay,
You don't need any input from us on this.
on the murals,
Yeah,
it's an information item. It was done with the help of our art commission. I don't think we do. You're welcome to share it if you have it.
I think they look fine, but I'm not an artist.
What is it?
They will shoot, I of course am concerned about vandalism and that sort of thing. And there is some vandalism that's occurred down there. We're trying to keep it under control. If you don't, you get more. Okay. If there's no further business or discussion, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and this council stands adjourned till its next meeting 2 weeks from tonight on Monday, June 17th at 7.